within 24 hours of the inauguration, he will, behind closed doors, with very short words, he will make it clear to both Vladimir Zelensky that he must negotiate. There are things right now he cannot get back, including Crimea, but he must negotiate. He will say the same to Vladimir Putin on the hotline from the Resolute desk in the White House, and he will say, I'll give one tip away that the president has mentioned. He will say to that murderous former KGB colonel, that thug who runs the Russian Federation, you will negotiate now, or the aid that we have given to Ukraine thus far will look like peanuts.
In this huge election year, I'm going to be going on the road this summer. I'm off to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the Republican National Convention, where the Grand Old Party, as it's called, is going to be officially choosing their candidate for president and vice president of the United States. Do listen to Times Radio, the election station, this July.
No red states, no blue states, just the United States.
The road to the White House.
Sleepy Joe Biden. He's gonzo, folks.
On Times Radio.
Let me now welcome to the programme Sebastian Gorka, a former deputy assistant to Donald Trump when he was president. Welcome to you, Dr. Gorka.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to seeing you in Milwaukee.
It'll be a pleasure. Can I ask you first of all about some questions of particular interest to us in this country? It's an enormously important presidential election, obviously for America, but also for the world and for us in this country. So can I start you by asking you first then? Look, both Labour and the Conservatives in this country would hope for cooperation and cordial relations with the US, whoever wins our general election. So what would a second-term Trump presidency look for in a newly elected British government to bring about that warm relationship?
Well, it's not for us to tell the Brits how to run their country, but if you look at what MAGA did, Make America Great Again, and the America First platform that saw my former boss rise to the White House, it's about representing your national interests. So whether it's stopping insane levels of illegal migration, whether it's actually contributing to the collective defense alliance that is NATO, dealing with threats to Western civilization, we would hope that the leadership, the next prime minister, his cabinet, would do what is best for the British and also revitalize the special relationship between our two nations. Donald Trump has a very, very warm place in his heart for the UK. And God willing, if he wins, then we will be doing our part to revitalize the relationship with London and with 10 Downing Street.
Right, so let's talk about the strategic partnership and Western security. Now, you may well know Nigel Farage, who I'm guessing you may well know personally. And before he decided to run in this general election here in the UK, he said the American election was more important even than our own. So let me ask you first a bit about Ukraine. I know you're a foreign policy specialist, Dr. Gorka. Now, Britain is very strongly committed to supporting Ukraine with the weapons and the loans that it needs to defeat Russia's invasion. Now, all the reports that I've seen suggest that Donald Trump simply does not share that commitment. Is that a fair and accurate reading?
No, I'm a little bit displeased or disappointed that you're quoting the mainstream legacy-lying media talking points that may have well been written by the Biden campaign. President Trump has been very explicit. The threat of Russia in Ukraine, the invasion of an independent state, is wrong, and it must be stopped. We salute the UK, who, along with Poland and the Baltic states, have done the most, along with the US, to assist Ukraine. But no, if President Trump, God willing, if we do our part, is reelected, I guarantee you within hours of the inauguration on January 20th next year, President Trump will stop the bloodshed in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians will remain an independent state.
Right, so that is very much the line that cut through in a way which I've rarely seen. It cut through on this side of the Atlantic so strongly, Donald Trump saying famously that he would be ending the war in Ukraine 24 hours after coming into office. Now, if we take that reference to 24 hours loosely to mean very, very quickly, is that really a serious ambition? And how on earth could it be accomplished?
Well, I'm not revealing anything. I'm not talking out of school. The president on the campaign trail has made it quite clear. He is the master of the deal. If you want to know who he is and what he achieved in his 50 years in business, to be the most successful, realtor, contractor, TV star of the modern age, you've got to read the book, The Art of the Deal. And I'll just give you the main points. Within 24 hours of the inauguration, he will, behind closed doors, with very short words, he will make it clear to both Vladimir Zelensky that he must negotiate. There are things right now he cannot get back, including Crimea, but he must negotiate. He will say the same to Vladimir Putin on the hotline from the Resolute desk in the White House, and he will say, I'll give one tip away that the president has mentioned. He will say to that murderous former KGB colonel, that thug who runs the Russian Federation, you will negotiate now, or the aid that we have given to Ukraine thus far will look like peanuts. That's how he will force those gentlemen to come to an arrangement that stops the bloodshed.
So that is an interesting position, that Donald Trump would go to Russia and say, we will supply Ukraine with a level of weaponry and ammunition of a kind that you have not seen so far. That is interesting. Is there a converse to that? That if Vladimir Zelensky is not willing to go to the table on the terms that you described there, that the new president, Donald Trump, would curtail or end the supply of weapons and ammunition to Ukraine? Because that is what Kyiv fears. That is what America's partners in NATO fear.
Well, look, at the end of the day, this is an independent nation that's fighting from invasion. It's very analogous to 1776 and our fight against the British Empire. So, in our heart of hearts, we want Ukraine to succeed, but we have to have them understand that America is part of the solution. So we do not wish to see them fail. But the president, look, let me put it in the broadest context. The president wants the bloodshed to end. Remember, when he was in the White House, we were safe for 4 years. There were no new wars. There was no surrender of the Afghan people. There was no October the 7th slaughter of the innocents, the largest loss of Jewish lives since the Shoah, since the end of the Holocaust. And there was no recrudescence and revitalization of the Chinese military, Iran on the cusp of nuclear weapons, and on and on and on. So the president's priority is to stop the wars. And I'm not going to say anything more about his negotiating strategies.
Okay, I mean, I've got to move on. I'd like to go into greater detail in that. We will, I hope, if we meet in Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee.
Right, I read just today in various papers and news organizations, a leader of the Democratic side on Capitol Hill in Washington is talking about Russian election interference in our election here. Does your candidate, Donald Trump, does he fear Russian interference in the American election? Because we all remember it was a line that cut through, and I'm not quoting from any enemy parts of the media towards your candidate. The quote was from Donald Trump. President Putin says it's not Russia when it came to election interference, and he said, I don't see any reason why it would be. Does he concern himself with that question of Russian interference? You've got a big election coming up.
Yeah, not in terms of a strategic threat. Why? Russia and the Soviet Union has interfered in the free elections of every nation since about 1917 and the creation of the KGB, the Cheka, the SVR, and today's, FSB. They've been doing that for about a century. Yeah. So that's not news. We have the intelligence community that made a very clear statement that despite the Democrats' Russia collusion, hysteria, not one vote was undermined in that election where they say, oh no, Putin got Trump elected. Not one vote. They did some things on Facebook about $60,000 worth of Russian interference, but one vote was perverted. No, the president's right on the major threat. The major threat is the Democrat Party. I mean, they truly have become an authoritarian regime. When you have the leader of think of the irony of this for a second. The State Department just sent a diplomatic démarche. This is Biden's State Department sent a diplomatic démarche to Venezuela saying, oh, naughty Venezuelan regime, you're trying to imprison the leader of the opposition. You don't do that in a democracy. The sheer irony that my former boss, the leader of the opposition, who's currently trouncing the incumbent senile old coot in the White House in every reasonable poll, is facing 730 years in prison. We have a threat to the functioning of our democracy. It's not Russian bots. It's Biden and Obama's cronies in the Department of Justice and the FBI, who, by the way, raided the president's residence at gunpoint. The threat is here, and it's not the Russians, it's the Democrats.
Right. Let me ask you about